Hello and welcome to Indus News, live from Islamabad. I am Muneeb Hamid with the news of this hour. Let's begin with the top stories first. United States President Joe Biden says the Kabul evacuation is one of the most difficult airlifts in history and is not without risk of loss. In Kabul, Pakistan's ambassador says over 250 foreign nationals are being airlifted, while 57 Pakistanis are evacuated through Torkham border today. Meanwhile, the Taliban senior leaders, including the group's co-founder Mullah Abdul Ghani Baradar, are discussing a future government in Kabul. Indian troops have martyred 3 civilians in occupied Jammu and Kashmir's Pulwama district. The victims were targeted during a so-called search operation at Nakhbariyan Tral area of the district. The occupying troops have killed over 400 Kashmiris since New Delhi's illegal revocation of the valid special status in August 2019. The United States has sanctioned several Russian companies that, according to it, are engaged in the construction of Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline. Moscow's ambassador to Washington says the new curbs violate international law. Earlier, the US also sanctioned Russia on transfer of weapons-related technology over the issue of blogger Alexei Navalny. In Australia, police clashed with anti-lockdown protesters and arrested several in Sydney as the country registered the highest single-day COVID-19 cases. Meanwhile, in Pakistan, 65 more people lost their lives to the virus and over 3,000 tested positive in the last 24 hours. Globally, the coronavirus caseload has surpassed 210 million, while the death toll is over 4.4 million. These were the top stories. Use it in detail after a short break. Stay with us.
And latest news from showbiz world. Let me quickly take you to the top stories of the day. We will be discussing a slight disappointment caused by Loki for the fans. Exciting review on the movie Back to the Future. How he indulges into his character in this movie.
There's a very interesting dynamic.
Matt talking about the setting of the movie. I mean, it's very captivating throughout.
Anna Kendrick's character, Catherine, who plays a PhD candidate.
Followed by a discussion on how the music festival can benefit the artist.
It wasn't without controversy when it was launched.
People are going to the cinema and they just want a bit of escapism. I don't think they want to see things that are too dark.
Exclusively the ability that he has mastered. Don't forget to share your feedback on the social media links mentioned down below. Stay tuned to find out more.
Welcome back. Now let's have the news in detail. United States President Joe Biden says the Kabul evacuation is one of the most difficult airlifts in history and is not without risk of loss. Biden said 50 to 65,000 Afghan allies are hoping to leave, but the evacuation of American citizens is the priority. Since Taliban's takeover of Afghanistan, several countries have intensified efforts to evacuate people, with the situation worsening at the Kabul airport. US President Joe Biden said all Americans and US allies will be evacuated, but said he cannot promise what the final outcome would be. Speaking at the White House, Biden said the Al-Qaeda is gone from Afghanistan after 20 years of US-led operations. However, Pentagon Press Secretary John Kirby has confronted the president's statement, saying Al-Qaeda as well as ISIS are still present in Afghanistan. Meanwhile, NATO said some 12,000 foreigners and Afghans working for embassies and international aid groups have been evacuated. Meanwhile, Russian President Vladimir Putin said the West must stop the irresponsible policy of imposing foreign values. Speaking at Kremlin, Putin spokesperson said the US-led intervention cannot be called a success, whereas China says Afghans must decide the future of their country and all parties should respect it. Moreover, the Taliban said they aim to unveil a new governing framework for Afghanistan in the next few weeks. A spokesperson said the mess at Kabul airport was not created by the Taliban, as the West could have had a better plan to evacuate. The spokesperson vowed the reports of reprisals by members will be investigated and the culprits will be held accountable. Meanwhile, Pakistan says it is arranging the movement of over 250 Afghans and foreign nationals to Kabul airport. Islamabad's ambassador to Kabul, Mansoor Ahmed Khan, said the evacuees included IMF staff and the Turkish nationals. In a tweet, the ambassador added 57 Pakistanis are being evacuated through the Torkham border today. Earlier, Pakistan's United Nations envoy Munir Akram said Islamabad has so far evacuated around 1,100 people from Kabul. In another development, Indonesia has temporarily moved its diplomatic mission from Kabul to Pakistan. Now, for more on this, we are joined by Sumaira Khan, our correspondent. She is present at Pakistan's embassy in Kabul. Now, Sumaira, please update us on the evacuation operation being carried out at by the Pakistani authorities.
I'm present here at the Pakistan's embassy in Afghanistan. It is the main embassy in Kabul, and we are here to observe the operational facilities that are being provided by the embassy. And in a short while, Pakistan's envoy to Afghanistan, Mansoor Ahmed Khan, will be coming to he'll be coming to visit all these people who are right now waiting here. According to my information that was given to me by the embassy officials, around 390 people have been they have been accommodated today. Half of them have been sent to the airport, Kabul airport, Hamid Karzai International Airport, to get them aboard on the evacuation flight. That evacuation flight came from Pakistan yesterday, and it was a chartered flight aimed at evacuating people from Afghanistan. And those who were evacuated through the airport, they include Turkish, Polish, Afghans, and few Pakistanis as well. So it is an ongoing process. The evacuation flights are coming to Kabul from Pakistan, and when they go back, they have many those who hail from different embassies, different UN agencies, and different parts of the ministries as well, who are there right now in Afghanistan, but they were stuck here due to some reasons, or the other reason was that their countries were not able to evacuate them in a proper time frame. But generally, if I speak to anyone, they are of the view that the respective countries are right now, they are not responding in a manner that they should have been responded to their citizens. But now the Pakistan embassy, you can see that in the background, that there is a system in place. They are facilitated through. They come here, they sit here, and then one by one their documents, they get verified, and after that those who travel by road to Pakistan by Torkham border, through Torkham border, they are separate right now. Those people who are traveling through road, they are sitting here, but those who were traveling by air, they have been sent earlier to the Kabul International Airport. I'll be updating you as the moment I get more updates. Stay tuned.
All right, now for more, we are joined by Air Marshal retired Masood Akhtar, a defense analyst from Islamabad. Thank you very much for your time, sir. Now, tell us, Mr. Akhtar, US President Joe Biden says the Kabul evacuation is one of the most difficult airlifts in history and is not without risk of loss. Does not this statement by the president of a superpower show severity of the situation?
Absolutely, and this is of their own making. Had they thought through the whole thing, had he listened to his Pentagon advisors, they were all along telling him this is going to get difficult and it is going to get messy. And in case they were to do an all of a sudden evacuation and withdrawal and drawdown, it is going to boil down to just this, what has actually happened. So it is but very natural what Joe Biden says, but well, that's how things are today. And he will have to take the blame.
Right. Also, so Pakistan is evacuating not only its citizens but also foreign nationals from Kabul. How do you see these efforts by the Pakistani authorities?
Very, very gutsy. One video that's been floating around of a captain who had to make decisions on his own was very brave. And otherwise, it's going as planned. I think Pakistan has played its cards just right so far. Because the Taliban are cooperating with the Americans, with the British, with the evacuating forces, which is a good omen. And Pakistan is able to, in fact, evacuate all its people and all those who are wishing to travel to Pakistan just the right way. The only thing is, one hopes that sanity continues to prevail, the Americans and the Taliban continue to cooperate. Taliban are doing very well. They have shown 3 restraints at the strategic level, operational level, tactical level. I think the world is out to appreciate what they are doing. One hopes they will continue to show such restraint till all have been evacuated. And then, of course, like they say, they will put together a multilateral coalition. That should be a very good sign. For Pakistan, that is a win-win situation.
Right. Also, lastly now, the Taliban have already announced amnesty for all the opponents. What fear Afghans and other nationals do have now?
This could not have been better. And I think Pakistan has had a major role to play in this. I spoke with a very, very senior official, and he confided that the Afghan Taliban have agreed that they will not behave the way they did 2 decades back. They will be different. They will be ready to listen. They will be ready to talk. They will put together a multilateral coalition. The true test when it is going to come, is when actual governance start and people are wanting water, they're wanting mobility, they're wanting gas, they're wanting a good living. Pakistan is a settled democracy. We may not be ideal, but we have difficulties of providing services to the people. These kids, boys and girls who have gotten used to an open media, who have gotten educated, they've done masters and doctorates, they are used to a way of living which Taliban, I only hope, are able to provide. If they can, it is good and win-win for everyone. Otherwise, the pressures, the problems will come, and in case the Taliban were to fall back to their previous instincts and try to control and over-control the situation, that is when the problems are going to start. One only hopes that they have learned. One only hopes they continue to listen to sound advice. Till now, they've done very well.
And lastly, very quickly, sir, also inform us that the future threats Taliban face in terms of the hybrid war.
Absolutely. You're talking of hybrid war onto the Taliban?
Yes, onto the Taliban.
Absolutely. Of course, without sending in physical forces, it is possible to undermine a government, and that too in a big way. The media is there, and the good thing they have done is they put the girl anchors back onto the television screens. They have started to show their flexibility. And I think the best news today is from Putin, the Russian president. And he says, for God's sake, stop looking at Afghanistan through your own prism of values. Look at them because they have lived a certain way. They have fought through back to Kabul. They are not as behaving the way they were behaving in the past. So that's good news. So hybrid war, obviously, there is a huge danger. We who are a settled democracy, we keep talking of hybrid war and 5th generation warfare onto Pakistan day in and day out. They are nascent, they are new, they have not started to govern. They are an extreme right, Deoband, religious ideology, which is difficult to change and change direction. But till now, the vibes are very good. So hybrid warfare, one can keep the fingers crossed. As of now, they have done very well. Putin is on their side. The Chinese are on their side. the Pakistanis, the Iranians, and once, if they continue to behave exactly the same way, I believe the recognition could quickly come, and that will make the job of Pakistan easier. Let's not fall back with the Western and the European blocs. I think Pakistan will do well. No sooner the Russians, the Chinese, the Turks, the Iranians, and these like nations start to recognize, we should not delay. And I think that will close some doors of hybrid warfare against the Taliban government. I only hope they continue to behave the same way.
Well, we all hope they continue to behave the same way. Thank you very much, Air Marshal Retired Masood Akhtar, for your time for Indus News. Thank you very much. Moving on now, Indian troops have martyred 3 civilians in occupied Jammu and Kashmir's Pulwama district. The victims were targeted during a so-called search operation at the Nakbariyan trial area of the district. The operation was going on till last reports came in. It comes a day after the occupying troops martyred 2 civilians in the same district, Pampur area. Indian troops have killed over 400 Kashmiris since New Delhi's illegal revocation of the valley's special status in August 2019. More news coming up after a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Now, the US has slapped sanctions on a Russian ship and 2 companies involved in the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline. President Joe Biden signed an executive order to impose the curbs. In a statement, the State Department said Washington has now sanctioned 7 persons and blocked 16 of their vessels. Moscow's ambassador to Washington says the new curbs violate international law. Earlier, the US and the UK sanctioned Russia over the issue of Kremlin critic Alexei Navalny. Meanwhile, German Chancellor Angela Merkel urged President Vladimir Putin to free Navalny during her official visit to Russia. She also insisted on extending a gas transit deal with Ukraine. US President Joe Biden's special envoy for North Korea has arrived in South Korea for discussions over stalled nuclear diplomacy with Pyongyang. The US State Department said Sun King will meet his South Korean counterpart No Kyu-duk and other officials during his 4-day visit. Upon his arrival at the Incheon International Airport, Sung told reporters he is expected the visit to be very productive. He said he would also be meeting his Russian counterpart Ligor Morgulov, who is also scheduled to land in South Korea today. The visit comes amid a standoff over US-South Korean military exercises that North Korea has warned could trigger a security crisis. Shortly after preliminary training for the exercises began last week, North Korea also stopped answering the hotlines. Now, Israeli troops have wounded 14 Palestinians in the occupied West Bank. They were protesting against illegal Jewish settlements. The Palestinian Red Crescent said Israeli forces fired live rounds and rubber bullets at the protesters. It said dozens of more Palestinians were affected by tear gas. Protests took place in the Beitar village of Nablus province in the West Bank. For months, Beitar has been witnessing protests against Israel's illegal settlement outpost near the village Evaitar. Now, Damascus has urged UN Security Council to act firmly to prevent Israel's attacks on Syrian territory. Earlier, Russia said Israel fired 24 missiles towards Syria from Lebanese airspace, 22 of which were intercepted by Damascus. In a letter, Syrian Foreign Ministry said Israel aimed missiles at posts around Damascus and Homs on Thursday evening. It noted Tel Aviv carried out the act of aggression to prolong the war on Syria and raising the morale of terrorists. It said the UN must also hold Israel accountable for its terrorism against the people of Syria, Lebanon and Palestine. Now, the Somali army says it has killed 60 al-Shabaab terrorists in an operation in the southwestern province of Lower Shabelle. In a tweet, the military said the terrorists were grouped up outside of Sabid and Kanule villages. It said the troops raided the terrorist hideout in an intel-based operation. The army added the slayed militants include 2 senior commanders. Earlier, the military said it has eliminated at least 279 terrorists affiliated with the Al-Shabaab group just in the past month. Now, Ismail Sabri Yaqub has been sworn in as Malaysia's new Prime Minister. He is a veteran politician from the country's longest ruling party, United Malays National Organisation. The 61-year-old was named Prime Minister on Friday after the collapse of Muhyiddin Yassin's administration this week. He is Malaysia's third new leader in less than 4 years. He took the oath of office in front of the monarch and other coalition leaders, including former Prime Minister Najib Razak. Ismail Sabri starts his job at a time when Malaysia's COVID-19 numbers relative to population rank as Southeast Asia's highest. Now, Brazil has recorded over 800 deaths from the COVID-19 and more than 33,000 infections overnight. Globally, the death toll is over 4.4 million, while the caseload has surpassed 210 million. More details about the pandemic in this report. More than a year and a half of on-off lockdown measures around the world has made people extremely wary. But the latest surge of Delta-driven outbreaks has given rise to yet another wave of sweeping curbs. The US extended the closure of its land borders with Canada and Mexico to non-essential travel such as tourism through 21st of September. Florida officials are threatening to withhold funds if school districts in two countries do not immediately do away with strict mask mandates. In Australia, anti-lockdown protesters clashed with police in Melbourne as the country reported a record high daily infections. Meanwhile, an anti-lockdown protest in Brisbane joined a large march in Melbourne and a smaller demonstration in Sydney. New Zealand's Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern warned that COVID-19 cases will go higher in the country in the next few days and urged adherence with new restrictions. South Africans formed hundreds of meters-long queues to get their COVID-19 shots after the government made vaccinations available to all adults. Sri Lanka has begun its 10-day lockdown as surging infections and deaths overwhelm the island's health system. A study shows that Euro 2020 final at London's Wembley Stadium in July was a super spreader event. The AstraZeneca said its new antibody therapy reduced the risk of developing COVID-19 symptoms by 77% in its late-stage trial. Meanwhile, the World Health Organization urged experts to join its advisory group Origins of Novel Pathogens after China criticized a new study had been politicized. Meanwhile, in Pakistan, coronavirus has claimed 65 more lives overnight. The health ministry says the death toll is approaching 25,000. The ministry said nearly 3,100 tested positive in the past 24 hours. It added that the positivity rate of the overnight infections declined to 5.73%. Pakistan's caseload has exceeded 1,119,000, while over 1 million have recovered. The number of active cases has crossed 89,000, of which more than 5,100 are in critical condition. Now, India's top opposition parties have called for unity to defeat the Bharatiya Janata Party in the 2024 elections. After a virtual meet, Congress leader Sonia Gandhi said the opposition has no alternative to working together in national interest. In a joint statement, the leaders of the 19 parties demanded the restoration of Jammu and Kashmir statehood. They also called for the release of political prisoners and free and fair elections. The leaders announced joint protest action between September 20 and 30th. They added Prime Minister Narendra Modi's Independence Day speech was full of misinformation. Meanwhile, Indian Prime Minister Modi's popularity ratings have fallen from 66% to 24% over 1 year. In a survey, over 14,000 respondents who were asked who would be the best suited to be the next Prime Minister of India. Respondents cited Modi's handling of the coronavirus pandemic as the primary reason for lower ratings. Over 70% of respondents said infections and fatalities were higher than the Indian government's figures. Regarding Kashmir, over 40% of people said the full statehood should be restored, while 25% were in favor of restoring both the statehood as well as the valley's special status. As many as 51% said they are scared to protest or express anything on any platform for fear of being arrested.
The world is observing the International Day of Remembrance and Tribute to the Victims of Terrorism today. On this day, people honor the individuals and communities that have been traumatized by terrorist acts.
The day was established by a General Assembly resolution in 2017. This year's United Nations observance focuses on the importance of connections to heal the trauma, especially during the pandemic. It says hateful ideologies continue to injure, harm and kill thousands of innocent people each year. On the occasion, Pakistan condemned all forms of terrorism, including as an instrument of state policy. In a statement, a Foreign Office spokesperson honored the 80,000 Pakistani martyrs of war on terror, along with over 90,000 Kashmiris as well as Palestinian martyrs. He called on the international community to take effective measures to suppress this terrorism beyond narrow political interests.
Now in Mexico, Hurricane Grace barreled into the oil-producing state of Veracruz with howling winds. Authorities say Grace threatens coastal areas with flooding from the ocean storm surge. It was a Category 3 when it made landfall near the resort town of Tequilotla. The National Hurricane Center said Grace was carrying top sustained winds of near 200 kilometers per hour. Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador said thousands of civil protection forces, the Defense Ministry and the Navy are prepared. Meanwhile, in the U.S., New Englanders brace for the first hurricane in 30 years as Tropical Storm Henry barreled toward the northeast coast. A swathe of the U.S. East Coast is under alert as the Tropical Storm Henry is expected to gain hurricane strength by today. The U.S. National Hurricane Center said the storm will make landfall in southern New England by late Sunday. Storm Henry is expected to become the first hurricane to hit the New England area in decades. Forecasters warned of violent winds, the risk of flash floods and surging seas as the storm churned in the Atlantic. Officials in the New England region warned people to get ready. In the U.S., more than a dozen wildfires burning in the state of California have scorched nearly 1.5 million acres of land. The Dixie Fire, the largest currently burning and second biggest on record, has wiped out the historic town of Greenville.
The wildfire has burned over 700,000 acres in the northern part of the state and still continues to threaten thousands of homes. Meanwhile, another fast-moving blaze, the Caldo fire, has charred more than 73,000 acres and forced thousands to abandon their homes. Over in Europe, wildfires have burned more than 135,000 acres of dry forest in Bolivia. Firefighters have reported 15 different blazes in 8 municipalities of the country's Santa Cruz department. In France, a major blaze that killed 2 people has stopped expanding for the first time since it broke out on Monday. However, it still remains unextinguished, and officials are fearful that the weekend winds might reignite it.
Now, the deforestation in the Brazilian Amazon has hit the highest annual level in a decade. A Brazilian research institute said from August last year to July 2021, the rainforest lost 10.4 square kilometers. The institute reported the area is equivalent to 9 times the city of Rio de Janeiro and nearly 7 times bigger than Greater London. It said the figure is 57% higher than in the previous year and is the worst since 2012. This comes amid increasing global concern over the accelerating devastation since President Jair Bolsonaro took office in 2019. Now in Greenland, rainfall has occurred at the highest point on the ice sheet for the first time in recorded history. Scientists have warned that this is another worrying sign of the rapid global warming. Details in this report.
Last week, rain fell for several hours at the over 3,000-meter summit of Greenland's ice sheet. Scientists say it is an unprecedented occurrence for a location that rarely sees temperatures above freezing. In less than a decade, the temperature at the ice cap has gone unusually high, which is very worrisome for experts.
Well, I mean, it hasn't rained there in the past because, generally speaking, it never gets above freezing. At that latitude, that close to the pole, at that altitude, it's cold even in the summertime.
The rain and high temperatures triggered extensive melting across the island, which suffered a surface ice mass loss.
You raise temperatures a couple degrees in the mid latitudes is something you don't maybe notice even, but raising it from 1 degree below freezing to 1 degree above freezing is a difference. If you're in the Arctic Ocean, it's a difference between ice skating and swimming. And so that's where we see these small changes can have bigger effects. And they're an indicator of the bigger effects that we're starting to see now more and more in the mid-latitudes, things like more fires, more heat waves, more extreme weather.
Rising global temperatures driven by climate change have made extreme weather events more common. Greenland experienced a massive melting event in late July. Enough ice melted in a single day to cover the U.S. state of Florida in 2 inches of water.
And that is all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus.news.